Kyle is with ColtsAuthority.com, also a contributor with BleacherReport.com. And a big game Sunday night, Kyle, obviously, at Lucas Oil Stadium, which I'm glad about because I don't know if I would have much confidence in the Colts if they had to go up to Foxborough. But I like the fact that the Patriots are coming down here going to Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday night. But before we get too much into the meat and potatoes of the game, I want to get your thoughts, and I know you wrote something for Bleacher Report. I was reading through it last night on this whole LaRon Landry situation. He's back. He's healthy. Have they just decided that Sergio Brown may be the hot hand, so that's who they're going with until Landry proves otherwise?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a little bit of, obviously Landry was disappointing when he was playing this year and last year as well, considering the contract they signed him to. But Sergio Brown's played really well in his stead. I don't know if the difference between them is all that much either way. But I think on one hand, you've got a guy who he hasn't been really invested in the locker room. I mean, he's a guy who he's never been really well liked. I had George Bremer from the Herald Bulletin on our podcast last night, and he was saying, he's just a guy who's kind of always been to himself. Doesn't have a whole lot of guys that are really invested in him in the locker room. And Sergio Brown, he's a guy who's well liked. He was a captain, a special teams captain last year. He's well liked in the locker room. He brings a lot of energy. So for the Colts, I think to some extent you've got a situation where there's no need to rush Landry back into the games. And he's been out for 6 weeks now. On Sunday there'll be his sixth game that he's missed, it'll be his the sixth week. So for him, there's no need to rush him back into the starting lineup. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him take that starting position back eventually. But for now, they're going to stick with Brown, maybe rotate Landry in on some sub packages, have him play special teams, kind of get him back into the swing of things.
Is Landry the kind of guy that may start to kind of, I don't know if the right word is whine, but will he start kind of making noise if he's not getting playing time, or is he the kind of guy that understands what's going on with his fight to get his position back?
I think he understands what's going on, especially considering, like I said, the contract that he got and how disappointing he's been. I mean, in the entire year last year, he didn't have a single pick. He didn't have a forced fumble. He didn't have, I think, the NFL.com credited with one pass defense, and other sites didn't give him any. So I mean, he hasn't been the playmaker that they signed him to be. So there's definitely some disappointment there, and I think he realizes that, and I think he'll be working to get back. I don't think you're going to hear any noise from him.
When they signed him originally, I remember when they brought him in, and obviously he's very physically imposing by the looks of him, but there was a lot of talk in regards to how much they gave him for a guy that I think only had one Pro Bowl season with his previous stops in the league. Were you in that camp that maybe thought that that's a bit too much for the player of his caliber?
I was, and Landry's never been a guy who's been real high on my list of players that I would pick. But I mean, he's definitely talented from a physical standpoint. But the one Pro Bowl he did get with the Jets last year, most people, a lot of analysts would have said that he probably didn't deserve it, but he got it anyway. It's one of those things. He playing on Rex Ryan's defense. But, he got all that money, and he's just never been a guy who's been really instinctual. He's been the guy who kind of he gets by on his physical talents. And, when they came to Indianapolis, it wasn't enough to just coast by with those.
Talking to Kyle Rodriguez, ColtsAuthority.com is where you can read his stuff. He's also on Bleacher Report. I love the tweet you included in your report last night on Bleacher Report. The one guy that said, and I don't remember who it was, but said something about LaRon Landry leads the league in downing a guy after he's been burned by a pass or something like that. I don't remember how the tweet was, but I laughed out loud because I was like, it's so true at this point. Now, we talked a couple of weeks ago when Landry was still suspended, and I told you that as much as I was interested to see how he fit into the Colts scheme, I haven't really been all that impressed with the way he had played thus far. And, I'm with you. If Sergio Brown's the guy and he seems to be playing well and a serviceable safety at that position, then I'd say go with him. But looking at this game on Sunday night, obviously this is a spotlight game for the NFL because this is the Colts-Patriots rivalry maybe doesn't have quite the appeal it used to back in the day when it was Manning and Brady, and maybe you could argue that some of that has switched over now that Manning's with the Broncos. But the Colts are in probably for one of the strongest tests of their season, and I know pass rushing has been kind of up and down this season. In your opinion, it's something they've got to get done in order to try to get Brady a little bit rattled, or he's going to walk all over them or Sunday night, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. You mentioned it. Whether or not it's the NFL's biggest game of the year, you could argue that Manning Brady is still that game. It's definitely the Colts' biggest game of the year. And in order to beat a quarterback of Brady's caliber, you've got to get pressure on him. We saw it against Denver in Week 1. They couldn't get any pressure on Peyton in the first half. They put up 28 points in the first half. The second half, they were able to get to Manning, able to get him a little bit more uncomfortable, and they did. I guess it was 21 in the first half, and then they scored 10 in the second half. So you saw against Pittsburgh, obviously no pressure on Ben Roethlisberger the entire game, and then they put up 50 burger. So if they don't get pressure on a quarterback that is of that caliber, their blitz schemes just expose them way too much on the back end for them to be able to stop an offense. So they were able to get pressure against some of those other quarterbacks like Joe Flacco and Andy Dalton. Can they get pressure on Brady? Can they disguise some of those blitz looks and surprise them a little bit? I mean, that's going to be the biggest key for them defensively.
Well, and I know New England you saw what they did to Manning and the Broncos. They throw, I don't know what it is, for Peyton Manning to be a guy that is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. Bill Belichick certainly rattles his cage pretty frequently. And now you've got Andrew Luck, who has grown, in my opinion, leaps and bounds this season. He's having just a great year so far. But I don't know I don't know how he can handle what New England brings. And I think I saw today is Charles, is he questionable or is he out for the game on Sunday?
Last I saw, he was most likely most likely out, maybe doubtful, something like that. He did miss practice yesterday, and I think he was either limited or didn't practice today. So, I'd be surprised if he started on Sunday. And that's a big loss for them because as poorly as he's played this year, he's still a solid starting tackle. He's been battling injury this year, so it's been hard on him, but last week he had a good game. He had a decent game the week before. It was more the interior against Pittsburgh that struggled. So for them to lose one of those bookend tackles, that's tough because you really can't depend on that interior very much to pick up blitzes and whatnot. If you're also getting pressure from the outside, that makes things on Andrew Luck so much more difficult. Whether or not he can handle what Belichick's throw at him, we'll see. He's had his moments against New England. In the playoffs last year, it started out slow, was able to start a comeback later in the game, but wasn't enough. So we'll see. I think the key for them is going to be if Andrew Luck can start quicker this year, avoid getting into a big hole, then they can be a little bit more balanced offensively, and they can keep attacking New England and force them to try and keep up with the Colts rather than the other way around.
Talking to Kyle Rodriguez, ColtsAuthority.com, and you kind of led into my next question. Do you foresee, in your opinion, will they come out a more maybe pass-heavy attack like we've seen them do over the last few weeks, or do they kind of try to rely a little bit more on the run? Because honestly, what I've seen out of Trent Richardson, and I know maybe I'm in a mindset with Richardson that he's probably not going to be what I think people expected him to be. He's not going to be an every down back, a guy that's going to pick up 4 or 5 yards. I think the situation they've got him in now with Bradshaw probably is the best fit for him. And I will say that I think Richardson has impressed me with the way he does run. He doesn't just, after the first contact, he doesn't just lay down like he kind of was known to do maybe last season. He keeps his legs moving. He keeps powering through. Can they get a successful run going against this Patriots defense?
The Patriots defense has struggled against the run, so I think that's definitely something they can do. But I think they have to avoid trying to lean on it. And that was the thing against Philadelphia in Week 2. They came out and said, okay, we think we can run on Philadelphia to start. And it was a surprise because most people expected them to just attack that weak secondary. So they kind of threw Philadelphia off guard in the beginning of the game, really leaning on the run game. But the problem was they stuck with it too long. And eventually they got to a point where, okay, the run game wasn't working anymore, and they needed to get back to the pass, and they couldn't get the passing game going. If they don't get the passing game going against New England, they're not going to have a chance. So they've got to be able to get Andrew Luck going and get that passing game working early. But I do think that they need to throw some wrinkles in. They do need to be a little bit more balanced because if they're in a situation like they were against Pittsburgh or even against the Giants where they're throwing it every single down, Bill Belichick's going to take advantage of that, and they're going to start sending those pass rushers. They're going to get luck rattled. So they do need to stay balanced, but they can't be afraid to get back to that passing game and make sure that they get it going early.
You think the Colts can win this game Sunday night, Kyle?
Oh, yeah, I think they can. I think, on paper, it's a really difficult matchup for them because you've got, obviously, Rob Gronkowski, and that's the big thing for the Patriots. Since Gronk's gotten healthy, the Patriots have been so much better offensively, and the Colts struggle with tight ends, as everybody who's watched them knows. So it's a very difficult matchup for them, but it's definitely a game they can win. I mean, partially just because you look at the team and what they've done over the last 3 years, they win games that they're not supposed to win. I mean, it's something they've done routinely, and I see this game, for me, I think in order for their game plan to work, I think they need to get out to an earlier lead, because comebacks against Bill Belichick and the Patriots are very rare. I mean, the Patriots have allowed 11 regular season comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks since 2001. I mean, it's less than one a year. It's very rare. Not that the Colts couldn't do it, but I think, best case scenario is definitely for them to get out to an early lead and force the Patriots to try and keep up. Kind of like the Broncos game was last year in the regular season. I kind of see something like that possibly happening. Are they going to win? I don't know. But the Patriots, they're only 3-11 on the road against teams with winning records since 2009. They're definitely a big boost to have this game at Lucas Oil Stadium, and it's definitely a game the Colts can win.
I like the way you reason that, Kyle. We appreciate the time. Kyle Rodriguez, ColtsAuthority.com. We'll talk again soon, all right, Kyle?
Hey, thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
All right, appreciate the time. Thanks.